Hello and welcome to the Business and AI Forum. Today we have a day of programming focused on showcasing how business and business functions are being impacted by AI technology. Without a firm understanding of governance, organizational capabilities, risk management, investments, ROI, and adoption efforts implemented in organizations, we cannot make full use of AI as a competitive advantage. My name is Joaquin Mulata, and I am the founder of the Swarm community, as well as the host of the AI Digest. And with me today is Michael Charles Borrelli. Michael is the COO, the Chief Operating Officer of AI and Partners. He is squarely responsible for ensuring that things happen in a timely manner for projects within his organization's portfolio of clients. He has an emphasis on quality, effectiveness, and efficiency, and his firm as an organization is focused on ensuring the compliance of organizations meets the latest rules and regulations coming with the EU AI Act. So today we're going to have a dialogue with him in a very organic fashion, very informal. And at any point, if you have any questions, feel free to chime in. But other than that, we're going to look at the slides that he has prepared for us today. And Michael, it's a pleasure to have you.
Joaquin, thanks for having us on. Pleasure to be here. Pleasure. Great to be able to provide some insights to your community and maybe shed some light on a very exciting period in the timeline of AI regulation.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, let's lay the context as to EU is a progressive territory. There's a lot of coalitions that are built there, a lot of research and development that goes into how to keep citizens safe with the use of technologies. It's no wonder that it's one of the first regulations to come forth in the world around AI technology regulation. So, is there anything you'd like to say around that?
Yes, I would say that they've been very bold, the European policymakers, with this being the world's first comprehensive regulation on AI systems, but it actually forms part of what's known as the 2030 Digital Europe Initiative, which encompasses not just AI, but other forms of frontier technologies, as well as quantum and semiconductors and other sorts of infrastructure components, because they want to make Europe a stronghold with respect to the digital economy. AI is going to play a huge part of that, and by extension, the EU AI Act. So it is in that sense necessary to make sure that it's done safely and securely, so businesses can deploy products with confidence that they're contributing, helping uphold a robust market infrastructure.
Thank you for outlining the anticipated impacts that AI is going to have on the global economy. I think we're all trying to wrap our heads around how we can toe the line of adopting this in a relatively open manner, but also ensure that citizens are not disproportionately impacted in a negative way around some of the widespread efforts or effects of AI technologies. Is there anything you can tell me in the context of that for the EU AI Act? How they're thinking of how to preserve risk or manage risk proactively?
Oh yeah, you've hit on a lot of points there. I think we'll come on to the concept of risk in just a minute, but the founding principles of this are to preserve the individual's safety, security, and fundamental rights. They view AI as a product, or an AI system as a product, so they want to make sure that any deployments or use of products don't infringe on individuals' health, safety, and fundamental rights in that sense. And managing risk is a key part to that. So if a solution is lower risk, then it's deemed to pose a lower risk of harm to those three elements. Conversely, if it's higher risk, unacceptable, it's deemed to pose a higher risk to those harms. So the very foundations of the regulation are designed to make sure that individuals are not adversely impacted by using a product. For example, if a general purpose AI system is being used by a child or being used by a elderly person who's has some form of impairment, then that could infringe on some fundamental rights. Whereas if they're dealing with a person who is more, should we say, sufficiently knowledgeable, capable, experienced, etc., then the risk is lower. So why this is so interesting in that sense is you could have one AI system, and the risk level be high, minimal, low, depending on the context of use and who it's being used by. So even you can have one system that has, yeah, like I said, theoretically multiple different risk levels due to the fact that it's being used by different people. And I think this is a very dynamic way of risk management that I think companies are going to face as the E-Rect enters into force, um, in just over a month's time.
Thank you for referring to AI as a product because I think that gives it a more concrete and tangible conceptual representation as how it plays a role in society. It can be a product, and that product can augment the capabilities of people. Sometimes it can be an entire service, like a software as a service. But I think ultimately, viewing it as a product, um, we can make parallels to healthcare, to pharma, to highly regulated industries that have a direct impact on the well-being and the social economic status of a person. So, how have you, how have you and your partners, how has your firm begun to sort of dig into this comprehensive rule system?
Great question. So the team have been working extensively and diligently for over 2.5 years on building a RegTech tool called Authorus, and its primary capabilities today is it identifies AI systems and it risk classifies them, because the what we find is that companies don't know um, what AI is. They don't know how many AI systems they have, so like a solid inventory. And then once they have the inventory, theoretically, they don't know the risk classification, because that determines everything from the strategy to risk management to the regulatory obligations. And this is the small part that we're playing in a huge ecosystem full of opportunities in that sense. Um, and simple things like understanding the risk of your inventory and how to manage your business are so fundamental to the way that businesses are going to operate in a very digitized economy nowadays. Um, but the and alongside that, we have consultation services as well, which um, are aligned with the regulations. So they helping companies understand what the different articles mean, how they work, what it means in practice, etc. So it's a new landscape, and similar to GDPR, when at the inception of the 2 year transition period, there's a wave of uncertainty, and AI Partners has built a leading practice to be able to help companies overcome those challenges.
What a chilling piece of information you just gave me. A lot of businesses don't know what classifies as AI systems, and less so what AI systems they may have in their inventory within their IT infrastructure. Um, yeah, that's pretty scary, man. I mean, truth be told, it's understandable. There's so many different elements, so many different internal and external dynamic forces that are being imprinted on an organization at any given time. But if you are going to adopt these technologies and you are going to operate in the European Union or at an international level, I would really hope that somebody is going proactively into that engagement, knowing full well, here are some risks. How do we begin to find out what we need to do?
I agree with your points are really valid there. From them, the viewpoint we have is if it's like GDPR, which is extraterritorial, it affects you whether you're, let's say, US fund manager or a Australian mining company, or you're you have pension funds based in the EU affects you on an international level, but also gold plating. So if the European standard is the highest quality, um, by being the world's most comprehensive law in that sense, if you adhere to those standards, you could pretty much, with a high degree of certainty, cover a global market in that sense. And there are obviously going to be other nuances, and we're seeing a global inception of other regulatory frameworks coming. And for example, in the US at a federal level and at the state level with Biden's executive order, and I believe the state of Utah actually got a AI legislation in place or being proposed. So um, it gives you some degree of legal certainty at an international level and makes you more competitive. And if we are indeed at the very nascent stages of the AI industry, albeit it's been around for some time, then it gives businesses that more level of clarity.
I appreciate you saying that AI technology has been around for some time. Um, but I think, at least from my perspective, and I own this opinion, the impulse as to these acts coming on so aggressively, in contrast to the way that government agencies, government bodies usually operate, which is more slow and deliberate, is the rapid spread of generative AI, such as ChatGPT and things of that nature. Um, However, given that there's sort of a whiplash effect between the decisions that a government makes to regulate the behaviors of agents or people within their territory, what is sort of the grace period for people to learn about this, acclimate to this, and then be compliant with these orders?
Well, before next month, it would have been a lot longer, but I'm afraid from May, with the official text being published and then entering into force 20 days after the 2-year transition period starts. And in direct comparison to GDPR, when the 2-year transition period was enforced, and most companies waited to the end, what's happened this time is they've foreseen that and they've introduced what's called staggered requirements. So, for example, when the 2-year transition period starts, companies within the first 6 months have to identify and get rid of any AI system or systems that are deemed to be prohibited under Article 5. So, what that prohibited systems are those that are, well, that's what it says on the tin, pose an unacceptable risk to individuals' health, safety, and security, and use things like deceptive techniques or subliminal techniques or deceptive methods that the individuals are unaware of, and that could induce them to take actions that they may otherwise not have taken. And they're deemed to be, that they're being strictly prohibited from the EU market. So the grace period was, yeah, the period for adjustment is not is not going to be like GDPR. It's going to be different, but then the degree to which there are support mechanisms and infrastructures available today can help them overcome that, whether it's regulatory tools or whether that's sort of information databases like the Digital Policy Alert or the OECD AI. There's some great stuff there to help them really, adopt AI safely. And to your point of generative AI, yes, that was the sort of, as it were, the Cambrian explosion. But leading consultancy firms have helped drive that forward, with industry pioneers like PwC, etc. And they would have the adoption of AI would have been done, with a view to the regulatory mechanisms in place or coming into force. So yes, there's a lot of uncertainty, but I would argue that there's a lot more certainty with the mechanisms available.
Um, yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to reason with the incremental adoption efforts. I think it's a very progressive way of tightening the belt gradually and making sure that the presence of government and penalties is enforced at a reasonable level. I think that's a um, quite refreshing input from the government. Learned from the mistakes of a previous rollout and is taking measures to not repeat the mistakes of yesterday. Um, So tell me a little bit more about this dedicated regulatory technology platform.
Sure. So it's called Authorus, and its current features, what it can do is it can identify AI systems by scanning the cloud infrastructure and inventories them. So you would have an inventory of how many AI systems you have, and then it would allow a user to go through and do a risk classification and print off per AI system, prints off a risk report and telling you what that category is. So it's the world's first in that sense. It has, as shown on our website, it's backed by the UK government, by the OECD, by Deloitte, and it allows companies, it gives them that credibility that there is a market leading solution already available on the market, already available to allow them to comply with the regulation from day one. So, and like I said, the team have been working extensively on this for over 2.5 years to work on this. And there's some interesting research to support the actual, I suppose, the market need for this. There was actually research done by a company called Applied AI Initiative, and they did a study of over 160 AI systems, and of those, over 40% of them were couldn't be identified. The risk level couldn't be ascertained. So, and others, and again, this is a team of dedicated computer research scientists at a PhD level working together extensively over a 2 month period to come up with that. So we have a solution that can do this in 15 to 30 minutes by a junior, and they don't need any advanced level of AI knowledge beforehand to do it. So it's a tool designed to enable anyone, regardless of their technical knowledge, to be able to go through and do these assessments in a quick, simple, clear manner. And that's why we're really happy to be able to say that we have a solution like this, and it can really optimize that process, save companies time, save them costs, and allow them to focus on the value generating and strategic high level work that clients are demanding.
I appreciate that perspective. I the more you describe it, the more I see it akin to doing your taxes. Usually, you want to go to a consultant, to an accountant that is well versed in tax code and tax regulations that change from year to year to ensure that you're compliant with all the immediate requirements, as well as how do you navigate and reduce your taxable income. How do you make sure you increase the total return on your tax input? Adhering to these regulations, adhering to the compliance with the EU AI Act, to me, is no different. You want to make sure you're not misspending your resources. You want to make sure you're not causing unintended harm, and this tool makes it that much easier for you to be able to scale your services. So I kudos to you, man.
Well, they could have done without the team, so that very much have the team to thank for this, and they've been phenomenal. Obviously, it goes out saying that we can't comment on any tax matters, but in the same way that you've described it, it allows accountants and consultants to use it. The platform is used or designed to be used by accountants, consultants, and lawyers to adhere to the most robust regulatory requirements. And so companies can, have that burden taken away from them. But the research suggests that this is the most impactful regulation since GDPR, where the fines are bigger and the cost of compliance is bigger. So if we can help them by taking this pain away from them from day one, then ultimately everyone stands to win from this.
Can you break down the EU AI Act into a way that we can more readily wrap our heads and arms around this? Because it's just such a, you mentioned Section 5. I haven't even begun to read the EU AI Act. So can you give us a little bit of a understanding of how it's composed? What is the anatomy of it? And what are its intended application areas?
So its anatomy is composed of different elements that are applicable to product safety. So it originates from something called the new legislative framework under the EU, which applies to products sold in the EU market, like medical devices or cars or things like this. So it's broken down into requirements for high risk products, conformity assessments, governance, um, enforcement, administration, and penalties. And within that, you have certain subsections. So you have, for example, under high risk systems, what the requirements are, and then you have them split out. Another section focusing on requirements applicable to developers of AI systems. So that could be people like Microsoft and OpenAI, to deployers, which would be deployers another term for a user, which is like a company. So it could be anyone from a large pharmaceutical company to a car manufacturing firm. Um, and it really focuses on the risk level. So the risk, depending on the risk level of your AI system, that determines the compliance obligations. So the majority of the provisions apply to those categorized as high risk. High risk systems are tackled in Article 6, 7, and Annex 3.
Yeah, I that's interesting. How do you think this is going to have a impact on the data governance practices of organizations at a local in a local context or even in an international context? So you're on mute.
Great question. Data governance we see as being fundamental. Joaquin, can you hear me? Sorry, Joaquin, can you hear
Yes,
me?
I can hear you now. I can hear you. Yep.
Great. So great question. Data governance is an essential element to this. I believe it's data governance for high risk systems is covered under Article 10, um, and it affects everyone at a micro and macro level. To your point. So, and the key aspects of that are um, data hygiene, data collection. So there's a lot of intersection here with GDPR, data management. How are you managing the data? How are you cleansing it? What data is trained in an AI system? How often is it viewed? Where are you getting it from? And we're already seeing a few instances now of potential lawsuits or areas of regulatory and legal uncertainty. So, for example, with media outlets training their data models on um, articles which people didn't consent to is potentially infringing on copyright and IP concerns, but also people scraping. So I think people are scraping. What do we mean by that is um, extracting information on publicly available sources without attributing that to the authors or indeed compensating them. So that's causing a bit of issues there. But from a governance perspective, it's how the data managed, who has oversight over it, and how are you managing that the whole process that fall within that.
Michael,
And then you'd have to work very closely with data science teams to manage this.
can you give me some more clarity around risk classification under the EU AI Act?
Sure. So it's a risk-based approach to regulation. Term KYC.
Yes,
Joaquin.
sir. Yeah, sorry. Say that one more time.
So are you familiar with the term KYC?
Kn- Know your customer? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes. So under KYC, you have to identify your client, do some identifying checks, and then you assign a risk category to the client. So then you know how to deal with them. So they would be minimum, low, medium, or high. So the same principle applies to EU AI Act, and what we call it is KYAI, Know Your AI System. So how it works, you would there's four principal categories under the EU AI Act: unacceptable, high, minimal, limited, and depending on certain characteristics of the AI system, and if it meets certain criteria or thresholds, that or content requirements that will determine risk classification. So, for example, if it deploys any techniques, subliminal techniques under Article 5.1a, then that would uh, presumably bring it in scope of the or deem it to be an unacceptable risk AI system.
Oh shoot, I was on mute. Um, can you tell me a little bit more about how someone who is navigating this environment can readily figure out the first step? They are concerned with, this looming threat of a new regulatory compliance measure, and they don't know where to begin.
Well, it's a common question we get from companies, and the first step is um, to identify any AI systems you have. So if you're using, most companies are either using certain data cloud providers, and what we do with authors is we ask them, say, look, hey, let's do a scan of your infrastructure, let's have a look, let's see how many AI systems you have, and then risk classify them. Because even if you're using an AI system, most companies have deployed or are using AI in the same way that they did with data on the GDPR. The risk category really determines the next steps. So um, what I would what I would advise to them, and what we say to our clients is, look, let's do it. Let's understand how the regulation applies to you. What by identifying, your assets and risk classifying them. And if the majority of them are minimal limited, then you have minimum exposure, and then the ability to run your day to day business is probably not as going to be as impaired. But like GDPR, this isn't something that you can ignore. It's one of the most covered pieces of legislation in recent history, and we believe is at the top of most C-suites people's objectives and agendas. Sorry, so it's not to be underestimated.
With the audits that you've conducted so far, what are some key pieces of insight that you can share with us around, patterns or problems or opportunities?
Most companies are utilizing AI systems. They don't know how many they have. Over 2.5 years of research and market expertise has shown that trends and patterns. It covers everything from simple chatbots to sophisticated trading algorithms. It could almost be called the Artificial Intelligence and Algorithm Act. And opportunities, I guess, are companies that embrace, the regulatory requirements early will gain a competitive advantage, and it will improve their market access opportunities. It will improve their capital raising process, and it will ultimately give them legal certainty from internal and external stakeholders alike.
I guess one immediate curiosity that comes to mind now that you're talking about this is, if you as an organization in the European Union adopt a new tool, platform, technology, as soon as you pay for it and you own it or you operate it, you thereby accept the risk. Is that correct?
I'd say that with product safety, the concept of caveat emptor applies. So be aware of what you buy, and there is a separate legislation called the AI Liability Directive to cover liability. So in the event something goes wrong, um, there are clear lines of accountability that you and people, and there will be a process to follow. Um, what I would say is anyone, whether especially those in regulated environments, understand the risk and understand, whether you're about to deploy an AI project, whether you're about to um, purchase a third party tool, whether you're about to start a new process procedure, the risk level of your AI system is absolutely essential.
Michael, thank you very much for coming on in Swarm and for this presentation. Um, I guess I just want to get your last thoughts. Who should reach out to you for what use cases and how can you help them?
Who should reach out to anyone affected by the EU AI Act, so that's small, medium, large enterprises across, and it's industry agnostic, so across all industries. Uh, People coming to us mostly at the moment are governance, risk, and compliance professionals, but also CTOs, CFOs, and CEOs. We can be contacted via our LinkedIn page, via our website, or indeed email addresses. That can be very happy to follow up with them afterwards. Um, and I guess from next month, the the 2 year transition period looks likely to start. So it's start early, and beware that that 6 month time frame, for example, within the first 2 year period will is mandatory. So we're here to help. This is a very complex regulation, but you can have confidence that you're working with a team that have been working on this diligently for over 2.5 years.
Thank you, Michael. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge. And yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below, and Michael will get to them as soon as he has a moment. Other than that, feel free to reach out to him directly, and have a good rest of your day.
Cheers, Joaquin. Thank you for having us.